Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest ASP webinar, we are tackling the not so small subject today of UTM tracking and GA dashboards, and how to fundamentally get some really great information from your event all the way into GA4. Today's is going to be a little bit different to some of the other sessions in which we've done, in which we're really trying to tackle quite a lot here. And whilst I do go into some of the detail, part of the idea is to just give the broad idea as to the subject that we're all trying to tackle here. There's one way in which we can do it, and which is relatively easily, and then there's another way which is a lot harder, and I'll expand on all of that. So buckle in, and let's start talking UTM tracking. So this is being recorded. There's going to be a blog post which is going to be published alongside of this for quick reading. And also any questions, if you put them in the chat, Katie is fantastically working alongside, and she'll forward them through to me. So please send in your questions. I'll try and answer them as I go along, or I'll put them to the end. But yep, says please put the questions in the chat. So just a brief intro for anyone who doesn't know me. Obviously, everyone knows ASP, been around an awful long time doing websites, especially for events. I started working with ASP predominantly. I was employed by clients to do an audit of one of their sites, and then started working for ASP in 2022, providing optimization, consultancy and services, help make the platform better, also make and also now help clients directly. We have a team of people now that helps clients directly with all things optimization, from SEO, CRO, and today very much data, in which we're getting pulled into this quite a lot now, and I'll kind of go into why actually we're doing this this session today. I'll come on to that in a second, but we're covering a number of subjects. From UTM code fundamentals, UTM GA4 campaigns, and making sure the data gets into those. Some common blockers there are with getting that data from the UTM codes and all data as it happens from the website into GA4. We're going to have a briefly talking about key events conversions and how important they are, and finally going to briefly also touch on dashboards and how just having data presented nice and simply, how it can make your life much easier and actually make that data more powerful. So I wanted to talk about why are we talking about this, because ASP do websites. I started doing optimization services for clients, but it's been very interesting in the last few months, or last year, we launched a service called Optimisation Time, and the whole concept was to offer bite-sized chunks of time, in which with no commitment, in which we can just help clients with anything from SEO, increasing conversions. But by far the most popular use that people have used this optimization time for has been to help them with their Google Analytics 4 setup, with dashboards, and sorting out tracking, which I found very interesting. So, and we're getting increasing number of support tickets come in talking about tracking Google Analytics. So it seemed only right that we talk about this in this webinar. And ironically also, we've got the largest ever sign up for this webinar that we've had before. So it certainly seems that UTM's data, Google Analytics, is a topic in which the whole industry is slightly struggling with. I've certainly had lots of conversations with clients about the challenges that people have been having around this topic, and making sure you get good quality data back into Google Analytics. So this is why we're having this webinar. We can share some of the things that we've learned, also make you aware of kind of what's happening and how to make your life easier. And hopefully it'll be the beginning of new conversations that we will have together about this topic, and how we can help you out further. So before we go into the bigger topic, the first part of this session is to talk about UTM codes. So for any of you who don't know, so a UTM code are tags or small sort of parameters that you add to the end of a URL. And the purpose of doing that is so Google Analytics, plus other platforms, plus which show insights and data. But we're going to concentrate on Google Analytics today, so they know where this website traffic has come from. So if we take this URL at the top here, we can see that we have UTM_source equals Facebook. So that's the source there was, so this is the source is the platform it comes from. So in this instance, it's Facebook. We have medium in this example, which is kind of the channel type. And we have campaigns. You can define which campaign there is too. There are many other types, but for this session, just to try and keep it simple, we're just breaking it down into the source, the medium, and the campaign. So why do you want to use UTM codes? Well, for anyone who has used Google Analytics, there's standard reports which show where traffic is coming from. So it may be organic search, it may be paid search, it may be social, it may be email, and that's very useful information to have, but it doesn't say specific campaigns within those sources. So for example, from social, you want to know precisely certain Facebook campaigns you may have done, Instagram campaigns, etc., etc. So it enables you to, on a granular level, start to define exactly the campaigns on which you're running, email campaigns, particular ones that have been sent out, and then you can start to compare one versus another, and to see which one is more successful than another one, and learn from one and another. But only if you tag up your URLs in the correct way will that actually then come back into Google Analytics. So setting up a UTM URL, firstly, there's quite a handy and easy to use tool, and it's this here. So if we go over to, just move the bar. If we go over to our campaign builder, it's relatively easy to set up. So firstly, you put in. So let's say we're looking to build a URL for a campaign, let's say from one of your social media campaigns. So first you put in the URL in which it's going to. That could be a page also. So we add the URL in here. Then we add the source. Points and notes, you always want to make sure that you use lowercase. That's a better way of doing it. So for example, if you had Facebook like that on one campaign and Facebook like that on another campaign, it would cause problems in Google Analytics. You'll start to split out the data. So we want to keep it so it's nice and consistent, and we put Facebook. Medium, it's social, and this particular campaign we've called XProm. And if we go down to the bottom, it's created us this nice URL here with all of the different UTM parameters on there. So as you can see, the URL looks quite complex, but in essence, all we're doing is starting to create categories for our campaign, in which we add in there, and then we have our URL at the bottom. So like we said here in this step-by-step guide, firstly we put in the source, then the medium, then the campaign, as we did before. Again, different people have different methods of doing this, but for organization, would certainly recommend keeping track of these, whether it's in a spreadsheet or something somewhere. So like I say, it's all organized, and as you run different campaigns, you don't accidentally call something the same as you ran a previous campaign, and you've got a naming convention basically for all the different campaigns. And then these URLs go into your ads, into your social media posts, etc., etc. Now, if you add those, and then you have a registration form, which is actually on your website, not where you go off your website, then all of this is fairly simple, because a client will come onto your site from clicking on one of these URLs. Google will, you'll have these appended to your domain name, etc., and Google Analytics will automatically pick those up and start feeding that data back into Google Analytics 4. So life is wonderfully easy if you have your registration form, which is your primary conversion, actually on your website. So we're going to discuss this a little bit more in the future, sort of a bit later on. But if you can get your registration form on your website and any other key conversions such as sign-ups, newsletter sign-ups, inquire for sponsorship, exhibitor inquiry, etc. If you have all that information and those forms on your website, this whole process of tracking data back into Google Analytics is relatively easy and pretty much just have to do what we've done here. We then have the slightly more complex scenario, and which is probably the main reason for why we have been employed for optimization time and for all of the different support tickets that have come into us about tracking. And this is the more common scenario, in which we will see at the moment, in which the registration form is not on the website. It's actually on a third-party platform. So what I'm going to do here is firstly just chat through what you can do on your website to make sure that the URL that you've already built with the UTM builder, as that comes into your website, then when you click out to say the registration form, we want to make sure that that those parameters don't get lost. Because if you just imagine the data flow for a second, you have someone who's come in, let's say from a social media post onto your website, they browse around, they then may click register now, then it goes off to your third-party platform, and what we want to do is make sure that those parameters, they follow you to that platform. That platform also has your Google Analytics installed on there, and then when they register, purchase a ticket, etc., that data then flows back into Google Analytics. So I'll run through the steps here of what you do to make sure that when you on your register now button or any other sort of call to action button that goes off to your reg form, make sure they put the right link in there so these parameters flow all the way through to the reg form. Right, how do we do this? So step one is to do what we did before, which is going off to the campaign builder and to build your URL. So that's all fine. The visitor will come onto the website, but now we need to make sure that all links that go from your website out to your reg form are done in the right way. Okay, so sorry, flicking about there. So when you click on register now, and I think if you just consider this session as an introduction, we have a supporting knowledge base article, plus we have a blog post which goes into this in a lot more detail. As I'm looking at it here with curly brackets and all sorts of things, it's a relatively challenging thing to kind of get across in this session. So we can follow up with the links to our knowledge base article and our blog post, which will also hopefully make this nice and clear for you. But all you need to do is, if, for example, in building in your campaign builder, you added a UTM source, such as Facebook, in the link from your register now button through to your platform, you'll need to add this bit of code where it says UTM_source and then the curly brackets and then UTM source in there. If that's the only thing that you are passing through, then that's the only thing you need to add to the URL. If you've also added Medium and Campaign 2, you do a similar thing. You add in these details here. So basically what you need to remember from this is, number one, we've got a knowledge base on the article which you can go back to, and it step by step goes through this nice and simply. And step two, just remember that now all of your links out to your reg provider, we need to be adding bits of code like this onto the URL to make sure that any data which is pulled in from your UTM parameters are carried through now to your reg provider. Any questions on that? That's fine. If you have, please let me know. Okay, so we've built the links in the URL builder. We've now added some parameters onto our Register Now button, and now we should have data which is now flowing into Google Analytics, which is installed on your Reg platform via Google Tag Manager. So where can you typically find this information in Google Analytics 4? So again, there's more information that can be provided on this. This is just a top level overview. I'm not going to go into detail into Google Analytics 4 because if anyone has used it, you know it's not the easiest to use platform, but you go into reports on the left hand side, acquisition, traffic acquisition, and then there's a you can then change the dimension to just check the campaign source and medium, and then you can see the details in there. We've also got a separate knowledge base article on finding that, so we'll make that available for you to see too. So by adding the dimensions to this link, these will pull the information, the UTM parameters through. And like I said here, just some top tips. Make sure that you use consistent naming conventions with your UTM parameters. So for example, not always using lowercase, not changing, say for example with Facebook, just keep it exactly the same from one campaign to another, and make sure you keep them all on a spreadsheet so it's nice and neatly organized. So when you have new campaigns, you know what to call them. And like I say, stick to lowercase and use hyphens instead of spaces is a good way of doing it. So one of the big issues that we see when we look at clients tracking is that even if the data is flowing correctly, they're not actually necessarily tracking the right things. Conversions, what you'd use in day-to-day life, but key events, as they're now called in Google Analytics 4, are critically important because, as I use the example here, let's say you had campaign A, we had 10,000 visitors being driven to a page, but no one actually signed up or did anything, versus campaign B, where you have 500 visitors and 50 conversions. It's pretty obvious which is the best campaign, you know, which one has performed the best. But I'll be amazed how many Google Analytics accounts I look at where conversions haven't been set up, and therefore you're not actually tracking the right things. So you can see if we have our UTM campaigns running nicely, where you have your first email which you sent out and you have your second email which you sent out. With conversions, it will let you know with the first one, let's say we had a conversion rate of 5%, but with the second one we had a conversion rate of say 10%, and that's very useful information to know. Now, sometimes that information will be available in your email platforms such as MailChimp, etc., etc. But one of the great advantages here is why you want to pull it back into Google Analytics, so everything is in the same place. It makes reporting so much harder when everything is all over the place. So this is why we're doing this. But we do find when speaking with clients that often a lot of this data is in separate places, which fundamentally makes reporting more difficult. And especially when you're busy during the key times of actually comparing one campaign with another, it's much more difficult to pick up if there are any problems. So the common key events or conversions in the events world, obviously the main one will be registration completion, and getting that so it's actually working correctly on the on the reg form is absolutely critical, and that's one of the main challenges and areas in which we help clients. Obviously, there's inquiry forms for exhibitors and sponsors. Often these are much more easy to set up because they're actually on the website, newsletter sign-ups, etc. So where often we get involved to help people is on that registration completion section, especially if there's a value that needs to be passed back to, such as if there's a ticket price, for example. So I think it's fairly easy to understand that tracking data is very important, and why is it difficult to actually get UTM codes that you've put in correctly and set up correctly, and why is it difficult to get that back into Google Analytics 4 when you have a third-party reg provider? Sorry, 2 seconds, I'll just see we have a question. In your knowledge base, do you cover how to find reg source data by this parameter in Firebase, or do you have any other resources on Firebase, or is it? Unfortunately, we don't have, I'm not so experienced in Firebase, but I'm sure a lot of the principles are exactly the same. Whoever's asked a question, if you ping something through, we can, and you have a specific question, we can look at that in more detail. We find with lots of the analytics providers that a lot of the principles apply across the board. So just ping your more specific question over, and we can look at answering that. So just going back, so why is it difficult if you have a third-party registration provider to get data back into Google Analytics 4? So it's certainly very possible, and there's lots of workarounds, but I thought it's worth actually just discussing in a bit of detail about why this is such a challenge. And it's not you. It's amazing actually how many people I speak to and they think it's them. It's something that they're doing wrong. In actual fact, when we start to kind of list where all of the blockers are, you can see it's not you at all. It's actually an industry-wide problem, and something which should really be addressed seriously, and I'll be talking about ways in which potentially that can be done later. Okay. Someone comes onto your website, you have a cookie banner. First step is someone could click decline in terms of the cookies. So on that basis, immediately you've already had all tracking information stopped. Now, if the banner set up properly and the allow all button is nice and prominent, then there's a good chance that a very high proportion of people who come to your website will click allow all, and that data will be flowing there. But if that cookie banner, which will be provided by such as CookieBot, Cookie Yes, for example, if it's not set up properly, or the allow all button is not prominent, then it's very possible that a very high proportion of people, and I've certainly seen cookie banners where 50, 60, 70% of people have declined, then that's a major blocker when it comes to data, which is going to go through eventually to Google Analytics 4. So having that set up correctly, having it so you have a nice prominent allow all button is actually really important, and especially one that works well on both desktop and on mobile. Now, what a lot of people do not realize is that whilst they may have a cookie banner which is compliant on the website, there isn't one on the registration, on the third-party registration form. Now, this is due to GDPR and data compliance laws. And obviously from a UX point of view, it really isn't fantastic, is it? You come onto the website, have to click allow all, go through, click through to the third-party reg provider, and have to do the same again. So unfortunately, this is the law at the moment, and it's because it's two domains. If it was on the same domain, then you don't have to have two banners. But because it's a separate domain, you have to have a separate banner. Now, this is all done in different ways. With some clients, they maybe provide two licenses for CookieBot, for example, and have one on the website and one on the platform. That's probably how I'd recommend it, because then you can have two that look very similar. So whilst the user experience isn't brilliant, at least they do look similar, and you just click allow all again. Some you have a separate cookie banner from the reg provider, which could look very different. And sometimes you're stuck with that, and that's how it is. Other times it's actually quite difficult to get a cookie banner on there. We've had that. So fundamentally, though, you need that cookie banner on there, because if you don't, we can actually, the Google Tag Manager, and which is installed across both, and where Google Analytics is installed to help that flow of data that comes back, will actually stop that data coming back because the consent requirements have not been met. So if you do not have a cookie consent banner on your reg form, Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager will actually stop the flow of this data coming back. So you need it just for your tracking as well as compliance, obviously. It's possible with Google Analytics to have misconfiguration and how it's set up to mean that data isn't flowing back into that. Like I've said, there's Google Tag Manager, which is installed, which is on your website, which is on the Reg platform. You then install Google Analytics, so it's across the top within Google Tag Manager. They have what's called consent settings within Google Tag Manager, and if that's not set up properly, you can have data not flowing back because of that. And then on top of that, as if that wasn't ridiculous enough, there's potential then quirks with the actual Reg platform. They're all set up in different ways, different technology, different ways in which they work, and there can be quirks with there that can stop data coming back too. So if you're feeling that there was something you were doing wrong in terms of your third-party Reg platform and why isn't data going back to Google Analytics 4, as you can see, it could be one of many, many things which is causing a problem. And it's not surprising. And the problem is the setup is different for all of them. The different the different cookie banners that you use, the setup's different for those within Tag Manager, etc., etc. So there's so many areas in which can stop data coming back into Google Analytics 4. The thing is, this is only when it's a third-party Reg provider. If you can get it where the form is, if you can get that form from that third party embedded on your website, it solves all of these problems. Maybe not the first one, maybe where you have the website cookie consent, it doesn't solve that, but everything else it solves. Because you're not having to go off to a separate website and involve all of these different elements. Now, jumping ahead slightly here, but because of this and because of becoming involved with this, we're having a number of very positive conversations with Reg providers at the moment. There are a good number who do actually provide solutions where you can embed their form onto your website. And so further details to follow in terms of the partnerships and what we're going to announce, relating to that. But the main point is that there are now Reg providers who do provide forms that you can actually embed on your website. These aren't iframes. This is actual JavaScript code, which means that this form fully renders onto your website, all of the text, all of the fields. So it's a full form experience on the website, not the kind of not so good experience you get with an iframe. So I'd highly recommend if you have agreements in place currently with Reg provider, but you have to stick with what you have at the moment. But moving forward, certainly start to investigate whether there are options to bring that form onto your website, because not only does it help with the user experience, not having to press cookie consent twice, not having to go from one domain to another domain, it also greatly enhances the chances of you, without a lot of fiddling about, getting that data back into Google Analytics 4. I jumped the gun here, but yes, for your next event, see if you can get your Reg form onto your website. Okay, we have a question. Would the UTM parameters still be captured if a user entering the site first clicked onto another page with your website before eventually registering? Yes. So basically, when someone comes onto the site, we then store that information in a cookie, as long as obviously cookies are accepted, and that information follows that user around. So long as you use the correct format for linking out to the Reg form, as we covered earlier with the Reg Now button or the Reg Now link, then those parameters will follow you around the website until you go back out to the Reg form, and then eventually it comes back into Google Analytics 4. But like I've said here, makes life a lot easier if you can get that reg form actually onto the website. It's worth emphasizing this point because there's a lot of organisers that we speak to who don't realise that there are reg providers who can do this, and they genuinely can. I've had experience in the past in financial services in which this is very, very normal to have sort of forms provided by third parties which are installed actually on your website. It seems in the events industry this has been slightly late to the party really on this, but it's very, very normal technology. You can get forms that work extremely well when the code's provided by a third party, and they will render very well on your website. And I would certainly consider, if you are speaking to reg providers for your next year's event and sort of negotiating with them, is now start to open this conversation about getting the form on your website. Because whilst there are always ways in which you can make these things work, like I've said before, with Google Tag Manager, setting up all the different cookie providers, etc., it is possible, and we do have plenty of clients where we've kind of fixed it, and that data does get back into Google Analytics 4. The thing is, though, it's not easy to set up, and also there's lots of steps along the way in which things can break. So let's say a particular provider, one of the cookie providers, just updates their technology because they're a third party. That could potentially break something, as with maybe Google Tag Manager, etc., etc. So you get rid of so many issues if you manage to get that reg form onto your website compared with on a third party. User experience is so much better as well, and I just want to re-emphasize that. If you just think of it from you go onto a website, you click register, you then often go on, certainly from what we find, you then go off onto another website which it looks quite different. So immediately it's a slightly jarring experience, and we find from experience the drop-off rate there can be quite high if the website, the reg form looks quite different to where they've come from. Not to mention you then have to click accept all again on the cookie banner. So the user experience is not fantastic. So there are many reasons why reg form on the website works really well. And for today's example, it's particularly for tracking UTM codes. It means that you can follow them all the way through into GA4, and it'll be nice, clean data and accurate data. Like I said, this is a bit of an overview today, just kind of from ends to ends. One of the things I often talk a lot about is dashboards. I think we can all agree that Google Analytics 4 is not very easy to use. It's not been warmly welcomed by people who used to use Universal Analytics and used to love that. And GA4 is just not user friendly, as we all know. I don't have to preach to the converted on this, but what we do find is that creating clients a dashboard could be really helpful, because it means you get the key information such as all these UTM campaigns, all of the different all the different channels on which you're driving traffic, all available on one sheet, which you can share to different people within your organization, so everyone's aware of how the campaigns are working, what the conversion rates are like, and you can easily compare one versus another. And when you have everything set up on a really simple and easy to use dashboard, people actually use it, people read it, and rather than it just being for the end of the campaign and sort of saying how well or not the campaign may have gone, is actually used during the campaign. And we specifically find that will relate to conversions and conversion rates. So for example, if you had one PPC campaign which had a 5% conversion rate, but the other one was 30%, you may be asking, why is that other one so low? And same with email. When you can easily compare one versus another with a really easy to use simple dashboard, it actually makes that data a lot more valuable and makes people much more likely to do things about it. So we help clients with GA4 dashboards, one page per event, you can have multiple tabs to have multiple events if you like, and so you can easily flick between one and another. So if that's of interest, they're very affordable. Drop us a line and we can set you up a nice, easy to use GA4 dashboard. It's made in Looker Studio, so it's a Google product, so it's always going to be supported. So the whole purpose of this really was to kind of explain how you can kind of join the dots really, to actually get access to useful data, which can help you manage your marketing campaigns. I think one of the key points here was that if we have a third-party reg provider and a third-party reg form, there's many bits in the way that could actually stop that and stop that coming back. And even if we do fix it and set it up, it's possible for that to break as well. So, but I do understand that that's not possible in all scenarios. So in most cases, we do set it up and it kind of works okay. Might need resetting up again for next year if reg providers changed or other things have changed too. But it does require thinking about, it does require planning, and thinking about tracking just a few weeks before the event, unfortunately, will probably not be enough time. Sometimes we have clients come to us saying that, the tracking's not working, we've only got 3 or 4 weeks to the event. Unfortunately, because of the complexities of this and everyone being as busy as they are, probably needs a bit more time to be thought about. I'd suggest the time to set it up is as you are testing registration form right at the beginning, and get the tracking getting tested as well. Maybe that's another question to the reg provider, that in their form there's a testing environment in which tracking can be tested and set up correctly as well. So with data, you no longer have to fly blind. You can have all the information there, and during the campaign especially, have a nice dashboard that's nice, easy to use as well. Oops, I got another question. Let's have a look. As part of our campaign URLs, we include the campaign content section to differentiate between emails, social posts. Looking at our GA4 traffic acquisition, it doesn't appear to be a drop-down option and a session medium, nor can I seem to add this. Am I missing something? What I'll do, I'll follow up with an answer to that question. It was how to get the traffic source medium information in Google Analytics, because I don't really want to share a client's Google Analytics account here on the session. What I'll do, if I follow up in our blog post, just make it simple of where you actually click to get that campaign source information in Google Analytics. But great question, thank you. So if you need any help with this, we can help. Like I say, information will be coming out on the knowledge base article, etc. There'll be a recording of this video, and I'm doing a blog post which expands on this too. Now, I don't think this is going to be the only session we're going to do on this. I'm expecting that we're going to kind of delve a bit deeper into some of these topics, because each one of them, quite frankly, is a topic in itself. And we've got some more webinars coming up. You can see the dates here. We haven't actually defined the topics for these yet. So if you have any burning topics, like you want to delve into specific bits of what I've talked about, was kind of spoken about quite quickly today, please let me know, whether it's Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager, etc., etc. If you send any requests, and then we can look to see what we cover in the session. Any more questions, anyone? No more questions. Well, hopefully that's given you food for thought. It's not you when it comes to having difficulties in getting stuff back. So step one is obviously creating the UTM parameters at the end of your URL. If your form is on your website, you've got a nice easy job. GA4 will be getting all that data. If it goes off to a third party, job's a little bit harder. Hopefully our blog post and our knowledge base article will be able to help you out. Otherwise, give us a shout and we'll see what we can do. Thanks very much.